ambition, lust, power. How the Vatican built an empire on God's name.
Ensure the tomb is sealed
Imagine
by
the
dawn.
throne of St. Peter,
secret
not as a
dies
symbol
with
of
us.
faith, but as the ultimate
be
prize in a deadly game. What if I told you the spiritual heart of the Western world was, for centuries, a nest of corruption? This was not just a few bad apples. This was a system. A machine fueled by unimaginable wealth and a hunger for absolute control. You think you know the history of the popes? You know the sanitized version, the one they want you to believe. But beneath the gilded ceilings and holy vestments lie stories of nepotism so brazen it would make a king blush, of orgies held within the sacred walls of the Apostolic Palace, and of wars waged not for God, but for territory and Dthe. The very men who claimed to hold the keys to heaven were dragging the world into their own personal hell.
Reach Avignon.
This is the story of how piety became a
will
mask
be
for
done
power,
by dawn.
and how prayer was replaced by
If the
poison.
king signs the decree,
And we are
we
about
lose
to
everything.
unmask the first of them.
Then the king must not leave this place alive.
Unbelievable. Unthinkable. A pope literally exhuming his predecessor to put him on trial. Why? The answer is terrifying. Imagine the scene. Rome, the year 897. Pope Stephen VI, consumed by a venomous rage, orders the rotting corpse of Pope Formosus dragged from its tomb. They dress the body in papal vestments, prop it up on a throne, and begin the trial. A deacon, trembling, is forced to speak for the dead man as Stephen screams accusations of perjury and illegal ambition. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. They stripped the corpse, hacked off the 3 fingers he used for blessings, and tossed his body into the Tiber River. This grotesque spectacle, the Cadaver Synod, was not just madness. It was a signal. A dark new age for the papacy was dawning, an era whispered about as the Pornocracy, where ruthless aristocratic women would control the throne of St. Peter, turning popes into their personal puppets. But who were these women, and how did they seize such absolute power? A pope who bought, sold, and debauched his way through history. This is the story they do not teach you.
Eminence.
His name was Benedict IX. Not a man of God, but a boy, possibly as young as 12, thrust onto St. Peter's throne by a powerful family. Imagine a Rome not of saints, but of shadows, where the Holy See became a playground for a teenager who ruled through terror and lust. Contemporary accounts paint a horrifying picture, a life filled with murders and unspeakable acts. His debauchery was so vile, the citizens of Rome finally drove him from the city. But Benedict was not finished. He returned, only to do the unthinkable. Growing bored of the power he never earned, he put the papacy up for sale. For a hefty price in gold, he sold the title of Pope to his own godfather, becoming the only man in history to auction off the keys to heaven. But even this was not the end of his unholy story. Poison, incest, murder. This isn't fiction. This is the Borgia papacy. Imagine a pope who bought his way to the throne. That was Rodrigo Borgia, who became Alexander VI.
The shipment must
He
be
didn't just want to
undisturbed.
lead the
The
church,
gate will be
he
open
wanted to
only
own
for
it.
you, Bishop.
For him, the
God's
papal
word
states were a
requires
family
difficult
inheritance,
choices.
a kingdom to be carved up
Choices
for his
they
ruthless
cannot
children.
comprehend.
His son, Cesare, became the blueprint for Machiavelli's prince, a man who used violence as his primary tool. His daughter, Lucrezia, was a pawn in a terrifying game of political marriages, her husbands discarded when they were no longer useful. Cardinals who opposed them would suddenly fall ill, their fortunes mysteriously flowing into Borgia coffers. The Vatican wasn't a house of God. Under Alexander, it became a den of assassins, a place where the holy chalice might be laced with a slow-acting poison. But how does such a dynasty of sin finally crumble? Often, from the very poison they perfected. The billion-dollar basilica. The ultimate scam. The monk who stopped it all. This is the real history. Imagine a pope who cared more for extravagant parties and hunting lodges than for the souls of his flock. This was Pope Leo X, a man born into the Medici dynasty who saw the papacy as his ultimate prize.
Good.
His grand obsession was rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica into the most magnificent church on earth. The problem? He was broke. So, Leo unleashed a brilliant, cynical plan, the mass sale of indulgences. For a few coins, you could supposedly shorten your loved one's time in purgatory. It was a holy shakedown on an industrial scale. But far away in Germany, a quiet monk named Martin Luther saw the corruption. He saw the greed poisoning his faith. And he decided to challenge the most powerful man in the world, armed with nothing but 95 arguments and a hammer. Leo would try to crush him, but he had already lit a fire that would burn down the old world. Rome's shocking secret, the Pope who created the Jewish ghetto.
Faster! Get inside
The
the
chilling,
gates now.
untold
Keep
story.
moving. Don't look back.
You have to understand, this was a man so consumed by zealotry, he turned Rome itself into a prison. This was Pope Paul IV. Before his reign, he was Cardinal Caraffa, the very architect of the Roman Inquisition. Once he had the papal crown,
agreed.
he unleashed its full terror.
See that
Books
you
were
do not
burned.
fail.
Fear became the air the city breathed. But his most enduring act of cruelty was aimed at Rome's Jewish community. In 1555, he issued a papal bull that would scar history. He forced them from their homes, stripped them of their possessions, and locked them behind the walls of the first ever Roman ghetto. You were forced to wear a yellow hat, a public mark of shame. A community that had lived in Rome for over 1,000 years was suddenly branded as alien. This wasn't just policy, it was ideological terror, penned by the hand of God's supposed vicar on earth. And the walls he built would stand for over 300 years. The pontiffs of depravity. The survival of an empire. Is history repeating itself, or did it never end? You have to ask yourself, how does an institution survive centuries of such profound, systemic corruption? Was it divine will? Or was it something far more human, the sheer, unshakable power of an organization so vast, it could absorb even the most monstrous of its leaders, metabolizing their sins into its very foundation? The age of the bad popes officially closed with the Renaissance. Or so the history books tell you. But when you look at the shadows of the 20th and 21st centuries, the financial scandals, the cover-ups, the whispers that never quite fade away, you begin to see a pattern. The names and faces change. The methods become more sophisticated. But the core struggle for power and control, has that ever truly vanished? Perhaps the era of the debauched, murderous pontiff is over. But a new kind of darkness may have simply taken its place. The question isn't whether the Church survived its worst popes. The real question is, what did it become in the process?